Go ahead, you guys.
So hi, everybody. I'm Christine Holmes, Electronic Resources and Discovery Analyst at San Jose State University Library. And this is my colleague, Shresley Rodriguez. She's also obviously at San Jose State University Library. She's our AI librarian. And I'm happy you're here today to listen to our presentation. Shresley, do you want to go ahead and share the presentation? And while she's doing that, I'm just going to, thanks, we can see it, yay. If you have questions, could you wait until the end of the presentation? That's how we would prefer it. Thank you. Okay, so our title, prof, we went with it. And so that's what this conversation is today, is to talk about how the process that we went through in order to decide to enable Primo Research Assistant. And we're not going to talk about what is Primo Research Assistant. We assume that you have some understanding about it, but our presentation slides do include several slides in our appendix area that explains what it is for everybody else. Okay, so next slide, please. And then once again, there we are in case you didn't recognize this. Okay, next slide. So this is the agenda. And basically, we're going to walk through, like I said, the process involved in how we arrived at our decision making and the numerous phases we went through, like testing with employees and internal communication with our library employees, and then ongoing and future considerations that we've realized we needed to pursue once we'd actually enable Primo Research Assistant. Next slide, please. And here's just to give you a sense of the time involved in this whole process. It was quite lengthy. From the beginning of May 2024, the demo of Primo Research Assistant at Aluna 2024. And then again, we'll walk you through these various dates of when we did what and in order to come to a decision. So it wasn't until months later, July 18th, 2025, that we went live with Primo Research Assistant. So next slide, please. So the first task that we did was we actually created a task force, and it was comprised of different stakeholders that came from our existing committees, our Primo Working Group. I'm sure all of you have something similar. And our Library Integrated Systems Team, which is a mix of librarians, staff, such as myself, programmers, cataloging, and management personnel, such as associate deans and directors. Jill is also on serves on this task force with us. And so that was our first step. Next slide, please. And here we began having initial discussions because this was something, right? This is different territory. This is not just oh, here's another new feature that they share with you and what's new webinars with Primo, right? So we had, a number of questions that we were trying to talk about and engage in, like, what is the purpose of Research Assistant? How do we assess this tool? Do we understand who the target audience is? So I wanted to share that because I'm sure you may have had similar conversations at your library. Next slide, please. And so now I'm going to talk about what happened after those initial conversations and how we arrived at phase one, which is the AI evaluation framework and rubric for our internal task force testing. Next slide, please. So here, I want to emphasize again, we had monthly meetings and lots of discussions because, for some of us, also learning about things that we didn't know about necessarily in depth, like large language models, right? And the RAG system. So we realized at some point that we were actually we're having conversations, but we're not getting anywhere. We're not actually making any decisions about what to do with Primo Research Assistant. So we enabled a test view, and then some of us presented to our university library board to see how how they would receive it. And it was a very positive reception. And I assume everybody has some sort of university library board at their libraries as well. And then we thought about creating a Primo Research Assistant framework and rubric. And in order to do that, if we did that and we were able to come up with some sort of numerical value, then we would be able to go on to the next phase of our testing. So next slide, please. So our framework is based on, we looked at various AI toolkits, including the NIH toolkit. We watched many AI webinars, which I'm sure you have as well, ACRL, Choice, Clarivate. And also we looked around and poked around and looked at other libraries such as Rutgers and Yale. And we also received a lot of assistance from our Library Associate Dean of Innovation and Resource Management. So let us show you now in the next slide. This is the framework that we created. And you'll see that we came up with, I think basically these are factors that most of you probably are using as well, right? Transparency, fairness, bias, ease of use, accessibility. And just so we're clear with our testers in our committee, we wanted to make sure everybody understood what those terms meant anyway, so we described each one of them. And then we provided criteria. So like that transparency, no disclosure, partial disclosure, and you'll see numerical value, right? And then a column for comments. And then after everyone had spent time testing Primo Research Assistant by asking it many, many questions, whatever questions they wanted, if whatever my questions are different from other people's questions, and then use this tool to assess it, write any comments you wanted to, and then we would be able to have a score, right? That would allow us to decide whether or not to proceed with, again, our decision-making about this tool. Next slide. So this is just another slide explaining a little bit more about the scoring system. And we did actually, our task force we got 71 points. Yay. So that meant we could go forward. And let me explain a little bit more here. So next slide. Here we just, I want to point out that we did actually have some accessibility issues because I think this is something that people talk about, right? So we did open up support tickets with Ex Libris, and they were addressed. So we're pleased to inform you about that. And I'm going to move on because we're just in the interest of time. But I do share some, we share some comments from the task force, and we're going to go on to the next phase. Because we did get a positive score among ourselves, we now wanted to go on to the next testing phase, which is the usability testing, which is what Shresley is going to talk about.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, I'll be talking about phase 2, which does involve using library employee feedback to inform the design, the rollout, and the decision to implement the Primo Research Assistant. So as Christine mentioned, there were lots of meetings we had about this tool. We had that test view that was available to committee members and then later library employees. So for the second phase, we chose to conduct anonymous, combined semi-structured interviews with usability tasks for our UX research approach. We got a total of 9 volunteers, 3 library staff employees, 3 student workers, 3 librarians, all anonymous. These testing sessions took around 45 minutes to an hour, and we conducted them via Zoom. On the slide, you will see our script. And this one is specifically tailored to a librarian because we had released a test view right before. And so we wanted to make sure that if they did test out the Primo Research Assistant in that test view, if they had any initial impressions, whether they recalled their last task, whether they recalled what they were trying to complete. If they didn't, we just went as follows, to having them share their screen and record their initial impressions that way. So we didn't record, we took notes. There was one facilitator, either it was me or Christine, and then the other one took notes. So and for the librarians in this specific test, we wanted to see if they could anticipate or recall student questions, either during information literacy sessions or during live chat. And you can see we asked them questions like, what's your first impression? How did it go? What worked well? On top of that, we also monitored any behaviors and impressions. Were they looking at the filters? What kind of questions were they asking? Were they having any trouble? So we'll go through some of the findings in a bit. But you can also see in our script is where the semi-structured interview part also starts, where we start evaluating key areas from our rubric, like transparency and trust. Can you tell if this tool uses AI? Is it obvious where the information comes from? Are sources clear and credible? Um, and I know as a former UX librarian, before I got this position, I was a UX librarian at SJSU, and I'm a strong proponent of always testing externally first because we're not our users, right? Library employees are not our users. So um, we would have conducted this with a you know with broader user testing with students and faculty from outside the library. But in this case, we've have already taken a lot of time, had a lot of discussions. I think internal UX testing just allowed us to gather actionable feedback without the delays of IRB, grant funding, or compensation funds. At the same time, we had momentum and at this time because, like Christine said, we had stakeholders. The university library board had tested it. The librarians were testing it, library staff. So we were having these conversations, and it seemed like the right time to do it as interest and engagement were high. Um, but yeah, ideally we would have done this with outside the library. But uh, I'll I'll move on. After each test, we then created what the field of UX calls a rainbow sheet, where each participant's observations appear in a different color to reveal patterns quickly. This just allows us to kind of see any recurring issues and insights right away. Um, for example, on the screen, I know it looks a little crazy, but you can see on the first yellow line, seven felt that they trusted the citations, and you could majority see that that's staff and students and one faculty. So this just allowed us to quickly see any observations. You can also see at the bottom we have something that contradicted the observation of sources are clear and credible in yellow at the top. The green says sources did not feel relevant or useful. So we also made sure to kind of see any contradicting responses or opposite observations. So we didn't we this is a very long sheet, but we're not going to display it for um, you know formatting and use privacy. But anyways, so we also shared after we did all that, we compiled our observations into an assessment and recommendations report. We had then sent this report to the rest of the library for transparency, and this just outlined our findings and our rubric-based recommendations. So I'll start with the key findings. One major takeaway was that participants felt that this tool made research feel more approachable. Staff noted it encouraged students to explore more freely, compared with regular OneSearch, which can feel rigid, and this tool just felt a little more interactive and inviting, as per some of the comments. And that they're actually in italics. However, there were reservations about content limitations across disciplines. Um, and something that maybe advanced researchers would navigate differently. So that was something that was discussed. Librarians also noted when they wouldn't use this tool and they would rather suggest other specialized databases when appropriate due to those limitations. Um, and the next key finding was that students actually really liked the AI related research questions, students and staff and one faculty. And it was actually something they weren't really expecting at all and were presently surprised. I think all of them noticed, like, oh, this is really cool. And they had expressed that it felt like it was helpful for them to brainstorm. They can see themselves finding keywords they could use in other databases or to narrow or broaden a topic. For example, I didn't know what video game modding was, so I put a screenshot of that. And it kind of is able to expand some other like branch off other ideas for a research topic. Um, and the next key finding is most like the overview. The students liked the strengths included providing quick summaries, saving time to gauge interest in a topic. Maybe they weren't sure about picking a topic, they put it in and were able to gauge an interest whether or not they'd like it as per comments. They could see them, they could see that like the overviews linked to sources, which added a layer of transparency for them. Um, when we asked probing questions about how they felt regarding the abstract-based summaries versus having their questions answered by a full text source. So because the overview does cover just the abstracts, we asked whether or not like that was obvious or whether or not that was something that bothered them. Um, so it seemed like it one student said normally they just skim abstracts for articles anyway, so they didn't feel that different to that. But then another student expressed a healthy degree of skepticism with anything generated by AI, whether or not it's from the library or not, and would know to verify. Um, and we also saw that some participants suggested that because of this confusion, that the overview of sources should be named overview of abstracts instead of just overview. And on the slide, you could see that it was labeled simply as overview and then changed to overview of sources and repositioned below the sources section. So this is actually something from Ex Libris. Um, and and this just kind of indicates of how it's kind of a misleading term that also showed up in our usability tests. Um, the next one is filters were easily missed. Actually, most participants did not check the filters, did not see them. So it was a noted weakness that there isn't customization. The customization of the interface is limited. So we try to address participant recommendations wherever possible, and I'll cover that in the next few slides. There was some initial annoyance with follow-up questions, but according to the students, it wasn't a deal breaker. So more experienced AI users, particularly students, expected this kind of feature, but after they tested out, and their feedback was that it wasn't really a deal breaker and that they would eventually figure it out on their own as they interact with the tool, and they can always just start a new thread if needed. But that interaction was easy enough to figure out, or that limitation was easy enough to figure out. So in the final section of our user test / interview, we asked participants whether they would enable this tool in production. And 78% of participants gave strong or conditional approval to offer the AI Research Assistant in OneSearch. Um, I'll just quickly explain some of that. So, 5 individuals, 2 staff members, and 3 students said to enable it now. One librarian said they would support implementation if faculty librarians are adequately prepared to integrate and educate around its use. Their reasoning was that they understood the necessity for the AI tool awareness, for AI tool awareness in general, and the importance of introducing AI slowly in libraries, and just the corresponding need for enhanced support. And as one participant put it, what better way to do this than with something that our library catalog offers? 2 individuals, 1 faculty member and 1 staff member, were open to approval pending improvements to the user interface. So their main request involved better customization, clear explanation of what content isn't being searched, and clear tooltip labeling. For example, the overview of sources, or making that section more transparent, or the filters, being able to create a tooltip on top of the filters. Um, 1 faculty member did oppose enabling PRA or PRA altogether due to general ethical concerns about AI, and expressed that they personally wouldn't teach with it because of limitations, but also, their own personal feelings about AI, which were very valid. Um, and so, in the end, 78% supported moving forward with some version of implementation. Um, so to address some of the conditional and pending approvals, we took that feedback seriously and made few interface adjustments where we could, such as the pop-up box upon signing in. This pop-up box is our clear disclaimer for so before a user can access the tool, they do need to acknowledge the pop-up disclaimer. And that's to make sure that they're informed up front about what the tool does and doesn't do. So as you can see on the screen, there's a line that says the tool does not generate in-depth content to replace a paper or essay. As with any AI-generated content, answers should be fact-checked. Check with your professor before using it in your academic work. So this ensures that students are prompted to read and understand that before using the tool. Ideally, we hope it's both short enough to be read fully, but also still being clear about the expectations, and making sure our OneSearch AI Research Assistant guide is on there. Now, regarding the interface labeling, previously the tool is called Primo AI Research Assistant, Primo Research Assistant. In the test, we asked whether it was obvious that they were using an AI tool. Some said the sparkles icon gave it away, but others said, just the word assistant kind of brings up the notion that they are using AI. But others some weren't entirely sure. So we renamed Primo Research Assistant on the main as the icon label to get access to the tool to just AI Research Assistant. We also added a link to some of the recommendations that got implemented. We're also making sure there's a prominent display or link to the LibGuide, and this is next to the feedback buttons, the copy button, the try again, refresh buttons. We also decided to keep the reference chat and KingBot GPT button visible. So KingBot GPT functions after hours. So when the library staff chat isn't available, this version of the chatbot comes up. It's not connected to the Primo API yet, but we wanted to make sure these options were available in case, if a user had an issue with it during or didn't want to talk wanted to talk to a human person during live chat hours, we they would still be able to. And if it's after hours, they would be able to still find help or get referred to a librarian during business hours. Um, so why did we decide to enable it? There was it wasn't just because of the 78% conditional approval um, slash approval. Um, it was also just the conversations that we had with the students, with faculty, with staff during the testing. And the students said that they would probably continue to use AI in general, but they felt that if this tool was enabled, it would give them another option to get their questions answered. And specifically from a subset of library resources that the library already subscribes to. They mentioned that these databases and resources aren't always necessarily accessible through other AI tools. So technically, some scholarly content could surface from ChatGPT's deep research or web search features if that material happens to be open access or whether that AI tool is able to index it or pull scholarly material for whatever reason. But as you know, when you do use those tools, sometimes you actually end up seeing a lot of Reddit posts, blogs, reports, or other non-scholarly content. And that's both with deep research and web search. So, Primo Research Assistant isn't meant to replace those tools. And that's what we found in conversation. But we, but the fact that students and faculty will still use it, will still use AI, um, enabling PRA felt like to them a tool that is more of a reliable alternative that works within the library's license environment. So after the student employees tested it, they said they could see themselves using this as a more trustworthy and reliable option compared to public AI tools or other AI subscription tools. Um, One participant mentioned that some AI tools are expensive and that this would be another AI resource students could access freely to them, which really ties into being able to provide access and equity. None of us at that moment we were doing the testing, none of us knew how long, the subscription is going to be provided to the CSUs. So having a built-in library option felt important at the time as well. And the other decision, like we mentioned earlier, is making research approachable and fun. Is it always perfect? Not at all, but it does give students and users a sense of a starting point, and that's what we found in those conversations. And research is hard, so you can open a library database and not sure where to start. So it seemed like this tool made that process more approachable. And now moving to the responsible AI alignment piece. At San Jose State, we see a lot of momentum around AI adoption. It's also part of the CSU strategy. And so at the same time, we felt like enabling this would ensure that the library is part of these conversations. Because, we lead information literacy on campus, and because AI fundamentally changes how research and search happens, the library itself sees themselves as a very key stakeholder in shaping those discussions. So, enabling PRA not only positions the library as a leader in doing that, but also creating that framework. We created a framework for evaluating it through responsible AI principles. As Christine mentioned, we didn't just turn it on. We had a full year, looking back on the timeline, we had a full year thinking about it, discussing it, reviewing, and testing it. And so I'm going to move on quickly because I know, but We also saw this opportunity for AI literacy opportunities. The limit, because limit librarians were clear about whether they would use the tool and when they wouldn't. Um, this including noting content about restrictions on content and databases, um, and acknowledging that it might not work equally well for every discipline. We felt that through the lens of AI literacy and existing AI literacy frameworks, we saw this as an opportunity to teach students the difference between natural language processing and traditional research or Boolean searching. So essentially, at this moment in time, students will likely need to use both approaches for the time being. And we don't know whether vendors will fully transition to NLP-driven algorithms for search or if it'll be an add-on later, but we know that already AI is already changing the way search happens. So it could be a part of discussions around AI literacy, around database and licensing limitations. That's not only present on this tool, but to all AI tools have those licensing limitations. Um, and then, so after that decision, we to go live, we created a LibGuide, announced it to the library. We resent the report findings. We also had meetings and trainings with library employees, and we went live on July 18th, 2025. So I'm gonna shift it over back to Christine for ongoing and future considerations.
Right. So next slide. Thanks. All right, so the next couple of slides, I'm sharing with you our usage statistics. And as you know, as we said, we went live July 2025. So that last column shows you a very healthy statistical usage of this of the tool, and we're pleased with that. Can you go ahead and click on the next slide? And we also have the user groups. Right? So a lot of graduate students, some faculty, and so on. And if you saw earlier, it would be lovely if we were already using mixed panel. I think would be wonderful to see some of these statistics in that new tool, but that's okay. So next slide. So we're sharing these statistics with you because it's great. We didn't really market the tool. We kind of want to use this semester to just sort of see, do people discover it on their own? It was marketed a little bit, but not like heavily marketed. Because like I said, we're just trying to observe to see what's going on. So we now know, at least since July till now, that the research assistant is being used, and we know by whom, but we don't know why. And now we're going to think about, as a future consideration, that's probably something we need to understand. So that's why we shared these statistics with you, and also so that we might need to consider how to incorporate training in the future. So next slide. I think that's for you now, Shresley.
Sure. So then, LibGuide maintenance, making sure that we are staying on top of ethical and environmental policies, the recent discussion of guardrails. We have all of that in our LibGuide. We are also developing an AI policy tool, well, AI policy tool review, and thinking about how that framework would look like if we were to do that every 6 months. Um, then we're also exploring alternatives, starting with KingBot GPT. So before we enabled Primo Research Assistant, we had KingBot GPT. Before KingBot GPT, we had regular KingBot, which was built on a different platform. But and KingBot GPT is staffed after reference hours are enabled. And it's through that same SpringShare libchat widget. I kind of talked about this in the earlier slide. But yeah, it also handles FAQs from users. And this on the right, you can see how it was built. There's a reference in our references, there's our article that talks about creating this and some of the library-led AI initiatives around this. But I'm going to quickly say we are trying to implement it with the Primo API. It is a work in progress. It's not to the level where we have a prototype, but it's not to the level where we are We're working on it, but it's so anyways, I want to say if you already integrated the Primo API, please let us know. We'd love to talk to you. And I'll shift it over back to Christine.
Right. So after all of this work, and which we know great experience. I'm sure some of you heard today, or if you were watching the latest What's New with Primo webinar, and I'm just saying the CSU because I know the UCs and CCs in the community colleges may have different plans, but when we move to the new discovery experience, they are going to be having the capability to use natural language search. And so in the What's New webinar, which was last week or a couple weeks ago, it was interesting because someone in the audience asked, well, what is the difference between using a natural language search and Research Assistant? And I don't know that Ex Libris provided the best answer, or I think they're thinking about it. And other than saying that Research Assistant, of course, offers an overview of the 5 sources that it chooses. But we all know that if you use EBSCO products, for instance, they're using natural language search. And as Shresley alluded to a little earlier, it is changing the way, right, that we're looking at how we approach search in the first place and how we teach it. So I just wanted to share that as another ongoing consideration for the future. Okay, next slide. So I think we're done, and we do have a few references, and as I said in the appendix, we have a few more slides. So we're happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I've got 2 questions already in the Q&A. If anybody else has any questions, please type them in there. The first one is, do you have to sign into OneSearch in order to use Primo AI? And the
Oh,
answer to
yes.
that
I mean,
is
that's
yes.
everybody, right?
Yes.
Right now, because as I think we all know, I think they're still monitoring. There was some talk about they wanted to watch, when I say they, Ex Libris.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah, I
go
got
ahead.
this one. You have to log into Primo Research Assistant. They didn't want guest users using it because every API call costs them money.
Right.
So it's a load limitation rather than a data mining. But that was what enabled it's that login requirement that enabled you guys to create that pop-up box,
Right.
if you're
So
wondering.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, um, no surprise there. But okay, next question. Hopefully we answered that correctly.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about conversations the task force had, if any, about, the Azure content filtering? This person is referring to, I think, Christine, you'll recall,
Right.
the questions about, what was it, some of the languages, some of the queries that
Yeah.
had been
So
blocked.
so this came after actually we enabled Research Assistant, right? I think it was in August that we all saw that all of a sudden there was this concern because if you asked controversial questions or what appears to be controversial. People were asking stuff about Gaza war, for instance. It wasn't handling it well. And then people were angry and upset. And I have a link, we have a link in the resources about Aaron Tay, because he first brought up the topic about guardrails. Is what it's is the
Mhm.
reference. So in our LibGuide, that's what we mentioned earlier. We are aware that we have to continuously stay on top of this because this is continuing to change, right? The tool itself. And so we have a section about guardrails and how to work with that. But almost immediately, Ex Libris Clarivate corrected the content filtering, and it seems to be working a lot better now. And we also discovered it was just a matter of, at least initially, we just changed our questions, and then it didn't filter. I mean, it's very interesting. So just saying, but yeah, it had nothing. So that was separate. It came after months after all of our testing was done.
Yeah, there was a really interesting conversation about this on the Ex Libris listserv. So if anyone,
Right.
has time and energy to go back and pull those up, it was, I mean, both from a technical and from a
Right. And
ethical
that's like I
point of view,
said.
it was really interesting what happened with that and the
So
various
this is,
technologies
And
involved.
I can also add
yeah,
that
go ahead, Tracy.
things like that is also why we want to create a framework or process for evaluating AI tools on a 6 month or semester basis, because of that. And we also want to be able to be transparent about that, which is why we also have that on our guide. And I think it's also important to teach that, this it's those content filtering and guardrails are a thing across all AI tools. So that's another aspect of what we saw as AI literacy and what librarians can teach to that.
And this also goes towards kind of what I was saying when I was showing the timeline is that once you start one of these, like tomorrow at this conference, we'll be having a vendor AI tools panel or get together. And I'll be hosting that with Ya Wang at San Francisco State. Is once you start deciding you want to review these tools or analyze them, or there's a lot of maintenance that's going to be involved in how you, like Shresley said, we're going to now have to continue. You'd want to, of course, but at somehow every 3 months or every 6 months, we want to make sure that the content that we have in our LibGuide is still accurate. Because even during the testing, we kept seeing that that research assistant was changing, right? We noticed, we mentioned that it used to say overview, and then it became overview of sources, and then the overview was used to be above the sources, and now it's below the sources. So any kind of screenshots you have and so forth, all that has to continuously be monitored to make sure that we're providing accurate and reliable data that our users expect from us.
And the difficulty of staying on top of that is one of the reasons that we like to have student help. So we're very lucky to have a library school here at San Jose State. And Christine and Sarsley have been able to take some advantage of the students. Any other questions? We've got 2 minutes left with these folks.
I will say that I'm actually very excited to go to the next presentation. It's in the one at San Diego State with Kevin, Jeffrey, and Lucy Campbell and others. Because I think it's great that there's a number of AI uh, um, presentations during today and tomorrow, and I think it's great because I think it's very valuable, right, to listen to different perspectives or different approaches.
Yeah, let me drop those links in the chat again for those who want to go to
And
other
in our
sessions.
references, we did also, there is I wrote, there's another individual within the CSU system, Heather Cribbs, at CSUN, Northridge, and she also has been looking into this with an actual IRB funded research. And again, another perspective. Hope you have an opportunity or chance to look at that.
There's one other question that just came into the Q&A that has XLibris been responsive to your request for customizations? I'm not sure, did you guys really ask them to customize things or did you just do it?
No, because we yeah, I should have said sorry that some of you know Jessie Kai. She's done customization for the CSU for OneSearch, and it's thanks to her that we were able to do like the pop-up box and add some links there. And I think like put in the chat, the lib chat and the Kingbot on that page. So they couldn't do that kind of thing, but uh, we sort of got the impression that this is it's most of it's hard coded, and it's really not, there's not a whole lot you can do. And I'm sure they realize that because if you follow the Primo listserv, a number of people were saying, hey, we want the ability to do some customization and not have to be a programmer to do it. So they've heard it, and we'll see what actually is going forward.
I think that's they also had an advisory committee
Hmm.
within XLibris of library participants that were doing this. Um, this might be actually more of a Sarasli question. Ryan Edwards is asking if you've used PlayLab AI.
I have not used PlayLab.
I haven't used it either. So now we're gonna have to add this to the list of things to check
Yep.
out.
Another thing to do with AI.
All right. So we're at time exactly. So I will let you guys go. And thank you, everybody.